The briefing room was buzzing with quiet conversations, the kind that always filled the space before a mission. Captain Emily Lawson stepped through the door, her boots clicking softly against the floor. She paused for a moment, feeling the weight of 100 eyes on her. This wasn't just any room. It was a place where strength was measured, where experience was respected, and where she was the only woman. She scanned the faces of the officers, seated at the long table. Many were familiar, veterans who had seen more battles than she had years. Their expressions didn't hide their surprise. Some barely masked their doubt. Emily's heart beat a little faster, but her face stayed calm. She had trained for this. She had earned her place here. Still, she knew the silent challenge that hung in the air, whether she could prove it. The commanding officer began the briefing. The words were sharp, clipped, professional. Emily listened carefully, absorbing every detail about the upcoming mission. But beneath the official voice, she heard whispers. She's too green. Women don't belong on the front lines. How's she going to handle the Blackhawk? She knew those words weren't meant to be heard by her, but they cut deeper than any enemy fire could. Emily's hands clenched into fists at her sides. She had faced this before, in training, in early assignments, but never so openly. This was the real test, not just of her skills, but of her courage. The men around her exchanged smirks and low chuckles. One officer, leaning back in his chair, muttered loud enough for a few nearby to hear, "Let's see if she can keep up when the pressure's on." Another nodded, adding, "Flying a Blackhawk isn't a desk job. She might as well be here for decoration." Emily's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. She had learned that silence was sometimes the loudest response. She met their eyes, steady and unflinching. If they wanted a war of words, she would win it with action. Suddenly, the door opened, and the room fell into a heavy silence. Colonel James Reynolds entered, his presence commanding immediate respect. He was known for his fair but firm leadership and a reputation for making tough decisions without hesitation. His eyes scanned the room, settling on Emily. Without a word, he nodded toward her. "Put her in the Blackhawk," he said, his voice low but carrying across the room. The words hung in the air, shocking some, silencing others. A few officers exchanged uneasy glances. Emily's heart leaped. This was the opportunity she had been waiting for. The mission wasn't just a test anymore. It was a chance to prove herself where it mattered most. She rose from her seat, feeling a mix of nerves and determination. The Blackhawk wasn't just a helicopter. It was a symbol of trust and responsibility. She would have to show not just that she could fly, but that she could lead under pressure, make split-second decisions, and keep her crew safe in the most dangerous conditions. As she left the briefing room, she caught a few lingering looks, some still doubtful, others beginning to respect the quiet confidence she carried. Emily knew the road ahead would be tough, but she was ready. The mission was more than just another flight. It was a chance to rewrite the story. Walking toward the hangar, Emily's mind raced through the details of the operation. A reconnaissance team was trapped behind enemy lines, and time was running out. Every second counted. The Blackhawk was their lifeline. She had to be ready. The hum of the helicopters filled the air as she approached the cockpit. She ran her hands over the controls, feeling the familiar cold metal beneath her fingers. This was where she belonged. The doubts of the men in the briefing room were distant echoes now. What mattered was the moment ahead. As she strapped herself in, Emily took a deep breath. The mission was dangerous, the odds were against them, but she was determined to succeed. For herself, for the team on the ground, and for every woman who had ever been told she didn't belong. The engines roared to life, shaking the aircraft. The Blackhawk lifted off into the sky, and Emily's eyes fixed on the horizon. This was just the beginning. The morning sun filtered through the hangar's open doors, casting long shadows on the tarmac. Emily sat quietly in the Blackhawk, reviewing the mission checklist one last time. Outside, the other crew members moved with practiced efficiency, their faces serious, focused. But beneath the surface, The tension was unmistakable. It wasn't just the mission that weighed heavy. It was the unspoken question lingering in the air. Could she really do this? The whispers had started as soon as she arrived. Small comments, half-hidden smirks, sideways glances. She's never been in real combat. Let's see if she cracks under pressure. Emily could almost hear the doubt dripping from their words like poison. It was the kind of skepticism that could break even the strongest spirit if she let it. But Emily had learned to wear it like armor. Her co-pilot, Sergeant Davis, glanced her way, his eyes sharp but not unkind. He was one of the few who didn't mock her openly, though his silence spoke volumes. "Ready, Captain?" he asked, breaking the quiet. Emily nodded, her voice steady. "Let's get this done." As the helicopter lifted off, the city's noise faded, replaced by the rhythmic thrum of the rotors. Emily's fingers danced over the controls, every movement deliberate. She knew the mission inside and out, the route, the extraction point, the dangers that awaited. But the real challenge wasn't the enemy. It was the invisible wall she had to break through with every mile flown. The men on board were watching, waiting, some with doubt, others with curiosity. Emily could feel it, the weight of their expectations, unspoken but palpable. She focused on the instruments, on the radio chatter, blocking out the noise. She wasn't here to prove them wrong with words. She'd do it with action. Mid-flight, a crackle came over the radio. The stranded recon team had been spotted. They were pinned down, surrounded by hostile forces, their situation critical. Emily's heart tightened. This was no longer just a mission. It was a race against time, a delicate dance between life and death. The Blackhawk descended into a low hover, the ground rushing up to meet them. Emily's hands moved with precision, guiding the aircraft through the narrow clearing surrounded by dense trees. The enemy was close. She could feel it in the sudden tension among the crew. "Keep steady," she instructed. "We're almost there." Bullets kicked up dust around them. The rotor blades sliced through the chaos, but the danger was real and close. Emily's mind raced through contingency plans, emergency procedures rehearsed 1,000 times. Every second mattered. Suddenly, the pilot's voice came through, tense but controlled. "Enemy fire, 3 o'clock. Evasive maneuvers." Emily's grip tightened, her eyes sharp. She adjusted the controls, helping to steer the Blackhawk away from the incoming fire. The helicopter shuddered but held steady. The crew responded with practiced skill, returning fire as best they could. Inside the cockpit, Emily felt a surge of adrenaline mixed with calm focus. This was what she had trained for. The mission was no longer about doubts or mockery. It was about survival, about trust in her own abilities and in her team. The recon team was finally in sight, waving frantically from the tree line. The helicopter dipped lower. Emily's voice was steady, guiding the pilot through the final approach. The team scrambled aboard quickly, their faces a mix of relief and exhaustion. As the last soldier climbed in, enemy fire intensified. The Blackhawk rose sharply, spinning away from the danger zone. Emily's heart pounded, but her hands didn't falter. She stayed focused on the instruments, on the horizon, on the mission's success. The men who had doubted her watched in silence now, their skepticism replaced by something new. Respect, maybe even awe. Emily didn't seek their approval, but in that moment, she knew she had earned it. The flight back was tense but controlled. The danger wasn't over, but the mission was succeeding. Emily's mind replayed every moment, every challenge she had faced and overcome. This was more than just a mission. It was a statement. When the Blackhawk finally touched down, the crew erupted in quiet cheers. The colonel's words echoed in Emily's mind. "Put her in the Blackhawk." That order had changed everything, not just for her, but for everyone who had ever doubted her. As she climbed out of the helicopter, sweat and dust clinging to her uniform, Emily looked at the faces around her. Some were still surprised. Others were smiling with newfound respect. She had faced the worst doubts and come through stronger. This mission was only the beginning. But one thing was clear. Emily Lawson had proven that courage and skill were not measured by gender, but by heart. And in that truth, she had found her place in the sky. The briefing room was still heavy with tension when Colonel James Reynolds entered. His footsteps were steady and sure, commanding the room's full attention without a word. He scanned the officers sitting around the table, his eyes sharp as they settled on Captain Emily Lawson. The whispers and smirks faded into silence. Everyone waited, uncertain of what the colonel would say. Without hesitation, Colonel Reynolds spoke, his voice calm but firm. "Put her in the Blackhawk." The word struck the room like thunder. Some officers blinked in surprise. A few exchanged uneasy glances. No one questioned the order out loud. The colonel's reputation for making tough decisions left no room for argument. Emily felt a rush of adrenaline and relief. This was the moment she had been waiting for. It wasn't just an assignment. It was a chance to show the men who doubted her what she was truly capable of. But even with the colonel's backing, she knew the real test was still ahead. As the room cleared, Emily stayed behind to go over the mission details with the flight crew. The Blackhawk team was tight-knit and highly skilled, but some of them eyed her warily. She introduced herself, projecting quiet confidence. "I'm here to do my job. Let's get this mission done." Sergeant Davis, her co-pilot, gave a brief nod. "We'll see how it goes in the air." The hours before the mission dragged by, filled with final preparations and equipment checks. Emily ran through the emergency procedures again and again, making sure every detail was locked in her mind. The weight of responsibility settled on her shoulders like never before. When they finally climbed into the Blackhawk, Emily's heart pounded. The cockpit was a complex maze of controls and instruments. She took her seat, buckled in, and breathed deeply. The engines came alive with a roar, vibrating through the aircraft. Outside, the sky was heavy with clouds, a perfect cover for the dangerous mission ahead. As they lifted off, Emily's eyes flicked to the men in the cabin. Some avoided her gaze. Others studied her with cautious curiosity. She felt the unspoken challenge between them, but refused to let it distract her. Every movement was deliberate, every decision precise. Mid-flight, tension built as they approached the enemy territory. Radio chatter crackled through the headset. The stranded recon team had sent coordinates and a plea for urgent extraction. Time was critical. Emily's mind raced through the flight plan, adjusting for the terrain and the threat of enemy patrols. The Blackhawk descended low, skimming treetops and winding through narrow valleys. Enemy fire erupted suddenly, bullets pinging against the helicopter's frame. The pilot swerved, but the Blackhawk held steady. Emily's hands were steady on the controls, ready to assist with any maneuvers. "Brace for evasive action," the pilot warned. Emily called out adjustments, guiding the helicopter away from the most dangerous fire zones. The crew worked seamlessly, their training kicking in under pressure. In the thick of chaos, Emily spotted the reconnaissance team waving frantically from a clearing. Her voice cut through the noise. "Hold steady. Prepare for extraction." The team rushed aboard, their faces tired but determined. Enemy forces closed in fast, the danger escalating by the second. Emily's focus sharpened. She coordinated with the pilot to lift off smoothly, avoiding obstacles and enemy fire. The helicopter shuddered as bullets tore past, but the crew remained calm. The mission depended on her composure. As the Blackhawk gained altitude, the men who had once doubted Emily exchanged glances. Their expressions softened, respect replacing skepticism. They had witnessed her steady nerves and skill under fire. The flight back was tense but controlled. Emily monitored every instrument, every signal, every heartbeat. The mission was far from over until they were safely back at base. When the helicopter finally touched down, the crew exhaled a collective breath of relief. Colonel Reynolds was waiting. His eyes met Emily's, and he nodded approvingly. "Well done, Captain." Emily climbed out, exhaustion mingling with pride. She had faced the harshest judgment, not from the enemy, but from those who doubted her, and she had come through stronger. The story was no longer about a woman trying to prove herself. It was about a soldier who earned respect through courage and skill. And for Emily Lawson, this mission was only the beginning. The hangar was filled with the sharp scent of fuel and the low hum of engines as Captain Emily Lawson prepared for the next phase of her training. The mission had gone well, but the true test was far from over. Now, more than ever, every movement, every decision would be scrutinized, not just by her superiors, but by the crew who still struggled to accept her. Emily stood beside the Blackhawk, running her fingers over the cold metal frame, feeling the weight of expectation pressed down on her shoulders. Training wasn't just about mastering the controls. It was about proving she belonged in the cockpit, that she could handle the unforgiving realities of combat flying. She looked around at the men preparing their gear, their eyes lingering on her with a mixture of curiosity and doubt. The lead instructor, Sergeant Miller, approached with a clipboard in hand. His reputation for tough training was well known. "You ready, Captain?" he asked, his tone more challenge than question. Emily met his gaze steadily. "Always." The training drills began immediately. Every scenario was designed to push her to her limits. Engine failures, rapid descents, night flying, and emergency extractions. The Blackhawk's complex systems demanded precision, and Emily had to keep her focus razor-sharp. Each simulation was a battle against time and circumstance. In one particularly grueling exercise, the helicopter's engine simulated a sudden failure mid-flight. Emily's hands moved swiftly, following protocol. She worked with Sergeant Davis, who assisted with the controls, their coordination critical to the drill's success. The tension in the cockpit was palpable, but Emily remained composed. Her voice was calm and clear as she directed the crew through emergency procedures. Outside the cockpit, the observers exchanged approving nods. The men who had doubted her began to see something different, a pilot who didn't just survive the drills, but mastered them with a quiet confidence. Hours stretched into days, and the physical toll became evident. Emily's uniform was streaked with sweat and grime. Still, she pushed herself harder. The Blackhawk wasn't just a machine. It was her responsibility, and every lesson learned could mean the difference between life and death in the field. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Emily sat alone in the cockpit. The glow of the instrument panel illuminated her face, tired but determined. She thought about the mission, the fear, the chaos, the trust placed in her hands. She also thought about the whispers, the mockery, the doubt. They were still there, lurking beneath the surface, but they no longer had power over her. The next day's training was scheduled for night operations, a critical skill that separated average pilots from the exceptional. The darkness was a different kind of enemy, stripping away visibility and forcing reliance on instruments and intuition. Emily knew this would be the real challenge. As the Blackhawk lifted off into the night sky, the only sounds were the rotors slicing through the cold air and the steady hum of the engines. Emily's eyes flicked between the instrument panel and the landscape below, now a shadowy blur. The crew followed her lead, their trust growing with every successful maneuver. Suddenly, a simulated alarm blared, a warning of an onboard fire. Emily's training kicked in. She quickly assessed the situation, directing the crew to follow safety protocols while maintaining control of the helicopter. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she worked, but her voice never wavered. The exercise ended successfully, and as they touched down, Emily felt a surge of accomplishment. The men who had once doubted her gathered, some offering nods of respect, others clapping her on the shoulder. It wasn't just about surviving the drills anymore. It was about earning their trust. Later, Colonel Reynolds approached. His expression was serious, but approving. "You've come a long way, Captain. Keep this up, and you'll be leading missions, not just flying them." Emily smiled, the exhaustion fading in the face of genuine recognition. She knew the road ahead was still long and difficult, but this was a turning point. The Blackhawk was no longer just a test. It was her command. As night fell over the base, Emily sat quietly, thinking about the battles yet to come. She was no longer the woman they mocked. She was a pilot, a leader, and she was ready. The early morning mist hung thick over the base as Captain Emily Lawson prepared for her next mission briefing. The cold air bit at her skin, but she barely noticed. Her mind was locked on the challenge ahead. The reconnaissance mission had been a success, but intelligence reports now warned of a far more dangerous operation. An enemy supply convoy was moving through hostile territory, and the Blackhawk would be called on to intercept and disrupt it. Failure wasn't an option. Inside the briefing room, the mood was tense. The officers gathered, some still uncertain about Emily's place among them. But when Colonel Reynolds stepped forward, his presence commanded respect. This mission is critical. We need precision, speed, and courage. His eyes briefly met Emily's. Captain Lawson will be leading the flight. Murmurs rippled through the room, but Emily met the challenge head-on. She didn't need to prove herself with words. Her actions would speak louder. As she studied the mission plan, she noted the risks, tight enemy patrols, rough terrain, and the possibility of ambush. Back at the hangar, the Blackhawk was prepped and ready. Emily ran through her checklist methodically, each step a small battle against the doubts that still lingered. Sergeant Davis approached, his tone more respectful than before. "You ready for this?" Emily looked up, determination shining in her eyes. "Always." The flight began smoothly, the helicopter cutting through the sky with practiced grace. Emily's hands guided the controls, every movement precise. The crew worked seamlessly, their trust in her growing with each mile flown. But as they neared enemy lines, tension mounted. The radio crackled with updates. Enemy convoy spotted. Air defenses active. Emily adjusted their course, weaving through valleys and using the landscape to their advantage. The Blackhawk was more than a machine. It was a lifeline, and Emily knew it. Suddenly, a burst of gunfire erupted from the hillside. Bullets zipped past the helicopter, rattling the frame. Emily's heart pounded, but her voice remained steady. "Evasive maneuvers. Stay sharp." The pilot banked sharply, dodging the incoming fire. Emily coordinated the crew, calling out targets and directing defensive measures. The Blackhawk shook under the assault, but it held together. Amidst the chaos, Emily spotted the convoy below, a line of trucks moving quickly but vulnerable. She relayed the information to command, suggesting a quick strike to disrupt their supply chain. The crew prepared for a rapid descent. Emily's mind raced through every possible risk, every contingency. She knew the success of this mission could turn the tide in the region. As the Blackhawk swooped down, the convoy's guards opened fire. The helicopter's mounted guns responded, suppressing enemy fire. Emily's focus was unwavering. She directed the pilot through tight maneuvers, keeping the helicopter steady while the crew engaged targets. The convoy was thrown into disarray. Vehicles exploded, drivers scrambled, and confusion reigned. Emily's heart soared. This was the moment she had trained for. But the enemy wasn't finished. Reinforcements appeared, launching a counterattack. The Blackhawk was caught in a deadly crossfire. Emily's grip on the controls tightened. She guided the helicopter through a narrow canyon, using the terrain to shield them from the worst of the assault. The crew worked in perfect harmony, their trust in Emily evident in every move. They were more than a team now. They were a unit bound by respect and determination. As the Blackhawk climbed back into the sky, battered but victorious, Emily allowed herself a brief moment of relief. The mission had been a success, and she had led it with skill and courage. Back at base, the mood was different. The officers who had once doubted her now approached with nods of approval and quiet congratulations. Colonel Reynolds met her gaze and smiled. "You're proving yourself every day, Captain." Emily returned the smile, feeling the weight of that approval settle like a shield around her. The journey was far from over, but with every mission, she was rewriting the story, one of strength, resilience, and unwavering determination. The night was dark and heavy with tension as Captain Emily Lawson prepared for a mission unlike any she had faced before. Intelligence had uncovered a high-value target deep behind enemy lines, a leader responsible for coordinating attacks that had cost countless lives. The operation was risky, the kind of mission that tested every ounce of skill and nerve a pilot possessed. Emily stood by the Blackhawk, checking every system meticulously. The crew moved around her, their faces illuminated by the glow of the hangar lights, a mix of focus and unease in their eyes. She sensed the weight of what was to come, but beneath the tension, there was an unspoken respect. They trusted her now. More importantly, she trusted herself. The briefing had been clear. Stealth was critical. Any hint of detection could turn the mission into a disaster. The Blackhawk would fly low, using the cover of darkness and terrain to approach the target zone. Extraction would be fast, precise, and dangerous. As they lifted off, Emily felt the familiar rush of adrenaline mingled with calm determination. The hum of the rotors was a steady heartbeat against the silence of the night. She guided the helicopter through shadowed valleys and dense forests, eyes sharp on the instruments, ears tuned to radio chatter. Suddenly, a faint signal flickered through the radio, a warning from reconnaissance teams ahead. Enemy patrols had intensified. The risk was higher than anticipated. Emily's jaw clenched. Adjust course. Keep low and fast. We can't afford to be spotted. The Blackhawk dipped and wove through the terrain, barely skimming the treetops. The tension in the cabin was palpable. Every second felt stretched, every shadow a potential threat. Emily's hands never wavered, steady on the controls as she balanced speed with caution. Close to the target, the Blackhawk's night vision systems revealed the enemy encampment. Guards patrolled with weapons ready. Emily relayed coordinates to the extraction team waiting on the ground. Time was running out. Prepare for insertion, she ordered. The crew readied ropes and gear. The Blackhawk hovered silently over the clearing, engines throttled down to minimize noise. Emily's focus was razor-sharp as the ground team descended swiftly. Then, without warning, floodlights snapped on, blinding the night. Enemy forces had spotted them. Gunfire erupted, bullets punching holes through the canopy. Emily reacted instantly. Evasive maneuvers. Full throttle. The helicopter surged upward, twisting and banking to avoid the hail of bullets. The Blackhawk shook violently, but Emily's grip was unbreakable. She coordinated with the pilot and gunners, calling out enemy positions and directing counterfire. The crew worked seamlessly under fire, each movement precise and practiced. Emily's voice was calm, cutting through the chaos like a lifeline. As they pulled away, the extraction team scrambled aboard, adrenaline and relief mixing on their faces. Emily felt the helicopter tilt as the added weight shifted the balance. She adjusted immediately, steadying the aircraft. The return flight was tense. Enemy anti-aircraft fire chased them, and Emily pushed the Blackhawk to its limits. Every maneuver was a battle to stay alive, every moment a test of endurance and skill. Through the darkness, Emily's thoughts flickered to the men who had doubted her. Their sneers, their whispers. Now they were silent, watching, respectful. She wasn't just flying a helicopter. She was carrying lives, hopes, and the future of the mission on her shoulders. The Blackhawk finally touched down at base, the engines winding down in a heavy silence. Emily climbed out, exhaustion pressing down, but her eyes held a fierce light. Colonel Reynolds approached, his expression unreadable for a moment before breaking into a rare smile. "You did good, Captain. More than good." Emily nodded, the weight of his words sinking in. This mission was more than a success. It was a statement. She had proven that skill, courage, and leadership were not bound by gender. She was no longer fighting for acceptance. She was leading. As the night settled around the base, Emily looked up at the stars. The path ahead was still long, and the challenges would only grow tougher. But she was ready, stronger than ever, because now she wasn't just part of the mission, she was the mission. The morning after the high-stakes mission, the base was unusually quiet, the kind of silence that followed a storm, the calm after adrenaline had faded but before the next wave of challenges hit. Captain Emily Lawson sat alone in the briefing room, replaying every moment of the night's operation in her mind. The danger, the precision, the lives saved. It was a mission that could have ended in disaster, but instead, it had become a turning point. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from Colonel Reynolds. "Report to my office." Now, Emily's pulse quickened, not out of fear, but anticipation. She gathered her notes and made her way through the corridors, the familiar hum of the base surrounding her. The colonel's office was quiet when she entered. He gestured for her to sit. "I've been reviewing your missions," he began, voice steady and serious. "You've exceeded every expectation. Your leadership under pressure is exactly what this unit needs." Emily felt a swell of pride, but kept her expression neutral. "Thank you, sir." He continued, "There's a new assignment coming up, a joint operation with Allied forces. It's complex and risky. We need someone who can handle unpredictability and lead with confidence. I want you to lead the planning team." The weight of the responsibility settled on her shoulders. This was bigger than flying missions. It was strategy, diplomacy, and coordination on a whole new level. Emily knew this was a chance not just to prove herself in the air, but to shape the entire operation. Back at her desk, Emily dove into the mission details. The joint operation involved multiple units from different countries, each with their own tactics and communication styles. It was a logistical nightmare waiting to happen. But Emily thrived on challenges. She started coordinating meetings, mapping out plans, and building trust between teams who had never worked together before. Her phone rang, a call from Sergeant Davis. "Captain, the men are asking about you. They want to know what's next." Emily smiled softly. "Tell them to be ready. We're not done yet." The days blurred into nights as Emily worked tirelessly, balancing strategy sessions with physical training. She made it a point to visit the flight crew regularly, not just to check progress, but to connect on a personal level. The bond between them was stronger now, built on shared trials and earned respect. One afternoon, during a particularly heated planning session, tempers flared. Differences in approach threatened to derail the entire operation. Emily stood up, her voice calm but firm. "We all have the same goal. Let's focus on what unites us, not what divides us." Her words cut through the tension. Slowly, the teams began to find common ground. Emily's leadership wasn't just about giving orders. It was about listening, understanding, and guiding. Outside the conference room, a group of soldiers watched her through the glass. One of them, a veteran pilot named Jackson, nodded to Sergeant Davis. "She's got what it takes." The mission day arrived with a storm rolling in, gray clouds masking the sky. The Blackhawk was prepped, the crews ready. Emily stood at the helm of the planning room, finalizing last-minute details. When the helicopters lifted off, Emily felt a mix of nerves and confidence. She knew the operation's success depended on every link in the chain, from the pilots in the air to the soldiers on the ground. As the mission unfolded, unexpected challenges arose. Communication glitches, shifting enemy positions, and sudden weather changes tested every plan. But Emily's steady hand kept the teams coordinated. Her voice over the radio was a constant reassurance. In one critical moment, when an Allied unit was pinned down, Emily directed a daring extraction that saved lives. The crew executed flawlessly, trusting her every command. By the time the operation concluded, the storm had passed, replaced by clear skies and a sense of triumph. The Allied commanders praised the coordination and bravery displayed. Back at base, Emily received a message from Colonel Reynolds. "Outstanding work. You're shaping the future of this unit." As she stood outside, watching the sun break through the clouds, Emily allowed herself a moment to reflect. The journey had been long and hard. The doubts, the battles, the victories, they had all led to this. She wasn't just a pilot anymore. She was a leader, a symbol of what courage and determination could achieve. And this was only the beginning. The base was alive with activity as news of the successful joint operation spread. Captain Emily Lawson moved through the crowd with a quiet confidence, the weight of her recent achievements settling comfortably on her shoulders. She had fought hard, not just in the cockpit, but against the invisible enemy of doubt and prejudice. Now, she was no longer just proving herself. She was inspiring others. As Emily made her way to the hangar, she noticed a group of young recruits gathered nearby. Their eyes were bright with curiosity and hope. One of them, a young woman barely out of training, approached hesitantly. "Captain Lawson, can I ask you something?" Emily smiled, nodding encouragingly. "Of course. How did you do it? How did you earn their respect?" Emily considered the question, the memories of whispered doubts and mocking glances flashing through her mind. "I didn't try to be anyone but myself," she said slowly. "I worked hard, stayed focused, and never let fear control me. But more than that, I listened. I learned. I earned their trust by being dependable when it mattered most." The recruit nodded, absorbing every word. "I want to be like you." Emily's smile deepened. "You already can be. It's not about being perfect. It's about being real and committed." Later that day, Colonel Reynolds called Emily into his office. The room was quiet, the air charged with a new purpose. "Emily," he began, "your journey has been remarkable. The unit has changed because of you." She met his gaze steadily. "Thank you, sir." He continued, "I want you to consider a new role, a leadership position that will allow you to shape policy and training for the entire division. Your experience and insight are exactly what we need to prepare the next generation." The offer was both an honor and a challenge. Emily knew stepping into this role meant shifting from the cockpit to a broader battlefield, one of strategy, influence, and mentorship. But she was ready. "Count me in," she said without hesitation. In the weeks that followed, Emily threw herself into her new responsibilities. She traveled to training centers, met with officers and enlisted personnel, and developed programs designed to foster teamwork, resilience, and leadership. Her message was clear. Strength comes from diversity, and every soldier's contribution matters. She also worked to create a support network for women in the military, knowing firsthand the importance of having allies and mentors. The resistance she once faced had softened, replaced by a growing respect and a shared commitment to excellence. One evening, after a long day of meetings, Emily stood on the balcony overlooking the base. The sun dipped low, casting golden light across the landscape. She thought about the path she had traveled, from the young woman doubted in the briefing room to the leader shaping the future of the force. Her phone buzzed with a message from Sergeant Davis. "Ready for the next mission, Captain?" Emily smiled. Some things never changed. The call to duty, the bond of the crew, the thrill of flying. It was all still a part of her. She typed back simply, "Always." As darkness settled, Emily felt a quiet resolve. The battles ahead would be different, but no less important. She wasn't just part of the military's history. She was helping write its future. And for Captain Emily Lawson, that future was filled with endless possibilities.